And then I need, what do I need? I need to put this on share. Okay, share the screen. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Okay, can you see the screen now or no?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
You can see the PowerPoint, yeah? Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, view. Full screen. Okay. So we'll start because I cannot wait for everybody to come. If they're not here, they're not here is the problem. Just give me a second. I need to change something. Good. That will be okay, yeah? Okay. So, what I want to show you first, I will just... Okay, we'll start this and then I will show you what I put on the Teams. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. So on Teams, I just added there, uploaded 3 podcasts. One is from BBC, one from Mr. Alsop, and another one, and one reading. But we start with questions and answers. There are 20 questions. Some are very simple, some are complicated. You'll recognize some of yours. So the first one that I chose was, given the state of the world in the 20s and 30s, why was there only one General Assembly per year for the League of Nations? This sounds like a fair question. What do you think? Do you have any idea? Come on, help me out here. Why do you think it was only one meeting, one General Assembly meeting?
They weren't interested?
Yeah, they more likely was because there were so many different problems and there were so many different ideas, and they just decided to do it only once, maybe because they wanted to reduce the bureaucracy and cost and other things. Not very effective, actually, to have only one. Clearly not very effective. So the answer, the assembly met once a year. You can write bullet points, simple bullet points. Don't write everything. You're gonna have this available after the session. As you know, the ordinary session was normally in September, and there was a provision there that they can meet at any moment at the request of one state or more members, if this will be approved by most of the member states. So they will send a request to the governments, the country that has a problem. They will send a request and they will say, look, we have this problem, it's very urgent, we need to fix it. So maybe we have to meet and discuss and agree or disagree. And this happened in 1926 when Germany applied to be included. And you know that Germany was really in a very good period at that point in time. It was in full swing, the Stresemann era. Gustav Stresemann, the leader of Germany at that point, the leader on, you know, in reality, because the leaders were others on paper, presidents and other people, but he was the actual leader, the guy who actually modernized Germany after the war and brought them back to the discussion table and, you know, agreeing with some to do some things, like, for example, stopping the passive resistance in the Ruhr and so on. And because of that, Germany was regarded as a good partner again, and they've been invited to be part of the League of Nations. Their adventure with the League of Nations was very short, though, because Hitler withdrew Germany from the League of Nations immediately when he came to power in 1933. So that's the first question. The first question was, given the state of the world, why was there only one General Assembly per year? There was ordinary session. Of course, extraordinary meetings can happen, and that was the case of Germany. Second question. I don't know if you recognize some of your questions. Why was Russia not a member of the League in the beginning? Thoughts, boys? What do you think?
Because they were a communist?
Yes, because of the nature of the system and because they were in a big deal of a trouble in the middle of a communist revolution, communist takeover. Remember, from the Tsar to change system entirely, it was a shake-up of a huge country like Russia. And yeah, that's the main reason. So just bits and pieces. League of Nations was one of the planners and developers of anti-Soviet campaign. So they were totally against the Soviet Union idea, and the Soviet government was fighting against League of Nations attempts to intervene. And so there was a kind of like hate-hate relationship in there. In the mid-30s, due to the rise of extremist governments and extremist ideas, like in Italy, like in Nazi Germany, like in Spain, and so on. Then in Japan also, militarism and all the things that come after, kind of warrior state of mind. The governments of some countries, such as, I will say, such as France and Britain, they were like just looking towards a kind of cooperation with the Soviet Union. And there were 30 delegates of the League of Nations addressing the Soviet government in 1934. Remember the date, after 1.5 years after Hitler came to power. And they invited Soviet Union to join the League. It was that idea of better together than in opposite direction, even if we don't have the same ideas. And they were, look at that, invited the Soviet Union to join the League and bring its valuable cooperation. Kind of like blunt words, kind of, it's called wooden talking. It's kind of like a wooden tongue, you know, words that they don't mean too much. But still, Soviet government replied in the same day that they accepted the proposal, which is very interesting information. That and 39 members of the League voted for the acceptance. 3 were against, and I thought I will give you this information. Again, you won't have such a degree of difficulty, and you don't need to know all this information in the exam, but just for you to know that Netherlands, Portugal, and Switzerland were against acceptance of the USSR. 7 members abstained, and the USSR joined the League of Nations and became permanent member of the council because they were such a big country. Automatically, Russia, wherever they go, they become permanent members or a special member or something like that. In December 39, 5 years after, because of the beginning of the Soviet-Finnish War, invasion of Finland, 1939-1940, the council excluded the USSR. So a very, very short adventure, even shorter than, other countries. Very interesting how after only 5 years they have been expelled, actually, from the League of Nations. So this is about Soviet Union. Question was why Russia was not a member of the League of Nations from the beginning, and you Christians said it very well, because of the this fear of communism, because the country was unstable at that point because of the revolution and stuff, and then Stalin, the ascension, the rising to power of Stalin. But then again, in the 30s, in the 34, after Hitler was starting to lead Nazi Germany, he became Führer, and he developed all his extremist ideas, and he took heaps of measures about against communists, against social democrats, against all the things. We'll discuss about this when we do our depth study. So because of all these things, the members of the League of Nations, many of them, the vast majority of them, more than 80%, decided to invite Soviet Union because it's better to be with them, even if the system is completely different. And it was kind of like they didn't like communism too much. I told you many times why they didn't like communism. We're going to talk more about this during this PowerPoint. Question number 3. Did the League of Nations have any ideas, plans that they never got to carry out because they fell apart, and what effects could they have had? Very interesting question. I'm not sure I got all the right answers in here, but I tried. Yes, one of the most important idea was to end the colonial tyranny, and you can recognize that this was the American president's plan, and it was not agreed, obviously, by the big colonial powers such as Britain, the mighty British Empire, who didn't like any ideas, any mentioning of ending colonial rules, because they love their colonies and they love to have access to resources, and they love the colonial rule, and they love trade. So British Empire was strongly orientated against keeping the empire intact and benefiting from that. And to pave the idea for new forms of statehood. Very interesting, this one. Remember this one. To pave the idea, to pave the way for new forms of statehood, which will be democracies, to replace old monarchies. Remember the old empires that disappeared after the Great War, which will be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire, and the German Empire. So 4 huge empires collapsing, literally. So kind of like a renewal in terms of new forms of statehood. And also the mandate system put the colonial powers under international observation. So do you remember the mandate systems with class A, B, and C? Different categories of colonies. There's going to be another question later on about that. So the actions were delayed by the war, and the post-war conferences were aligned with the post-war realities. You always have to align to what you have. The League wanted to project for the future a nice world, which was not really achievable and achieved. So to answer to the question, any ideas and plans, there should have been a lot of ideas and plans to, to change the course of some countries towards democracy. To keep some countries away from communism, maybe, and later on, this kind of ideas and plans resurfaced, like Marshall Plan and other doctrines from the Americans to keep countries to fall from communism. For communism effects, most likely the effects would have been beneficial, but unfortunately, the colonial tyranny was not really ending at that point during the League of Nations mandate. So kind of wishful thinking, basically. Okay, good. Let's go to question number 4. Explain how exactly the British politicians in Abyssinian crisis got tough. Remember, we talk about this. Any ideas? How did they get tough? What do you think? Oh, Benjamin is here. Welcome, Benjamin. So how did they get tough? Do you have any idea? Why they will get tough? I will tell you why. They will get tough because the elections were coming. You see, in any country, in any time, at any time, if the elections are close, nearby, then the politicians kind of get a tough stance. Tough on what exactly? Positions, positioning of the country in relation with other countries, with other crises. In the case of the Americans, if they are becoming isolated and they just want to take care only of their own problems and stuff like that. So let's see what's the answer. So what was the first answer of the Brits? UK imposed, Great Britain imposed an embargo on arms sales. Who knows what's an embargo?
It's like when a country tries and stops trade from.
It's a ban. A ban. Excellent, Christian. So it's a ban on arms sales, like a sanction, okay? And the ban was imposed to both Italy and Ethiopia, forgetting actually that Ethiopia is not an aggressor. It's the aggressed country, so they've been attacked by Italians, by Mussolini. So Ethiopia, which obviously was Abyssinia. The embargo was a response to Italy's decree that it would regard any arms sales to Ethiopia as an act of unfriendliness. It was clear that the United Kingdom was protecting their economic interest in East Africa. What economic interest? Remember the map when we studied Abyssinian crisis, all the other countries surrounding Ethiopia, they were under French, or most likely more of them were under the British protectorate or British colonies. So they protected their economic interests. That actually goes back to the previous question, the previous answer, when I told you that Brits, they always valued their colonies and the money they can get and the trade they can get and the resources they can get. Remember, British nation was actually forged as a huge, very important, strong country and empire, mostly because of their conquest over the world, and also because of their industrial revolution that, kind of give them that platform to become leaders in almost everything. So they needed money, they needed resources, they needed colonies. So, they wanted to protect their interests. So the UK imposed an embargo, which was really both ways. Very lenient against the Italians, because Italians will say that an embargo, if they will sell guns to Ethiopia, they will be regarded as an unfriendly act. It was not the case, so Italy was happy that the Brits didn't actually took any measures against them. And remember, one of the reasons why Abyssinian crisis was not resolved was because of the they never imposed a total ban on oil exports. So that was one of the reasons why it didn't work. What other measures British politicians will take in the Abyssinian crisis to look tough will be that the British Parliament supported the initiative of Koniziliakus, and they authorized, that was one of the leader in there, authorized unanimously the imposition of sanctions against Italy if they will continue with aggressive actions against Abyssinia or Ethiopia. All the toughness of the British politicians was dictated, as I said in the beginning, by interests and proximity of the elections. It's a case in any countries. Politicians, they are becoming very aggressive and they look like they want to fix problems. It's a populist view. They want to be seen by people as doing something, and they want to be seen like delivering to people. Delivering populist ideas is telling people what they want to hear. And so it's a tactic. It's too sad for the humankind that people still believe politicians when it comes to electoral process. Immediately after the elections are won, politicians will say, oh yes, but we promised that, but it's not possible right now, but we're gonna actually do it later on and stuff. So they always lie. And that is not me being pessimistic, it's reality. Okay, so we'll continue and just look into the next question. How did the US react to the invasion of Manchuria and Abyssinia? Who wants to try with some thoughts? Just tell me, what do you think? How did they react?
They probably were a bit scared for the trade.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. The Americans were into trade too. Yeah.
With Japan, especially.
Yes, with Japan especially. Yeah. That's a good point. Any other idea, boys?
Were they worried that the UN, that the League of Nations would fall apart and the war would there'd be another war?
Yeah, that's a good point, Seth. Yeah, that can be another one, worried about the League of Nations. Okay, let's see. It was more of the isolationism, which is that kind of American policy that in which America is regarded as looking only towards their own interest, that kept the United States out of the League of Nations. Remember when they why did they stay out? We're going to talk about this later on in another question. The idea of preventing war was not really popular in the US of A. More popular was the idea that it was not America's business to be involved in Europe or Asia in these specific areas where we've had Manchuria and Abyssinia. Okay, Manchuria in China, province of China, Manchukuo, and Abyssinia in Africa, which will be Ethiopian, nowadays Ethiopia. So following Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, Roosevelt, the president at that point, declared the United States neutral. When United States is declaring itself Switzerland neutral, then they are in a full policy of isolationism, okay? following the failure regarding trade sanctions against Italy, merchants, or let's call them traders from USA, businessmen would continue send to Italy the materials that Italians needed to conduct their war. So it was kind of like America was on the paper neutral, but they continue to follow their interests in this respect. So question is, how did the US react? They reacted with caution and following their own interests. It's exactly what any big country will do in a situation like that. I don't want to do any association with nowadays war, but it's exactly what's happening nowadays too. Roosevelt also looked upon with contempt. And it's a very interesting thing, a fact I found for you here. He saw Mussolini as a part of a buffon, as a joker, as I told you in the lessons, responding to a photo of Mussolini goose-stepping, you know, the goose-stepping, that kind of funny looking marching step. He commented, this is the comment of Roosevelt, "It's wonderful what middle-aged men can do when driven to extremes." Pointing out that Mussolini is a little bit cuckoo and he doesn't really, he's not really a big enemy or something like that, but it's just someone to, you know, you just have a laugh, a banter about it, and that's it. So to resume, to actually articulate a sentence, here, how did the US react to the invasion? With caution, following their interests, plunging into a new era of isolationism. So that's the answer to the question, as much as we can answer this question, okay? So, good. Why were France and the UK seen as the powerhouses of the League of Nations after they had done nothing economically or militarily to stop the invasion of Manchuria and Abyssinia? So the question of your colleague is, why were France and the UK was still seen as the important countries, powerhouses in League of Nations, if they done nothing to stop the invasion, the big failures of the League of Nations, Manchuria and Abyssinia? Very interesting question, actually. And the answer is very simple. Can you try to give me the answer? Why do you think they were still seen as powerhouses? No? Okay, we don't waste time. Yeah, so tell me. Tell me.
Was it because of their colonies?
That's a good point too. Yeah, but to seen as the powerhouses of the League of Nations, do you think, I will ask you, Seth, directly, do you think they were still seen as powerhouses after all these things?
Yes, I certainly would be seen.
They were still powerhouses, but they were not seen literally as that because of the failures. So I would say that at that point, yeah, that's okay. It's a very good point you made. So at that point, after the second major failure in Abyssinia, the main powers, France and Britain, already lost all the respect and fear. So they were not regarded as powerhouses anymore. Of course, they have, as you said, they have their colonies and all these things. And maybe that's another extra reason to say that they failed. All the small countries will look towards France and Britain as the biggest colonizers on planet. So, and serving their own interest in the League of Nations. So the respect and the power of the League of Nations was lost completely at that point. And of course, the year was 1937 when they already realized that Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, and their newly the new addition to the Axis powers, the Japanese, will wage war all over Europe and Asia, so, and in the Pacific. So that was that's the answer to this question. Why were France and UK seen as the powerhouses after they have done nothing militarily and economically to stop the invasion? Obviously, one other point is like they've done nothing to stop militarily the invasion because they didn't want to. We discussed about that when we've done the lesson about the failure in Abyssinia and Manchuria. They didn't want to send troops so far away for nothing. So they were very preoccupied to protect their interests, and that was about it. So big powers always protect their interests, even if you talk about USA, UK, France, Russia, Germany, no matter which big power you talk about, Japan, they are protecting their interests first and foremost. Okay, so next question. Why did the UK and France secretly agree with Italy invading Abyssinia? That's a good question. Thoughts?
It was because Mussolini. It was because Mussolini had stopped Hitler before.
Yes.
And they wanted to continue that war against a potential German.
Yes.
A military, like another war happening. So they
yes.
decided to, yeah.
Excellent. They've seen the ability of Mussolini to actually keep Hitler at bay, to keep it kind of like in Germany. So Mussolini, remember, he managed to stop the first attempt of Anschluss. Hitler actually respected Mussolini a lot until he became bigger and stronger than him. Mussolini was the inventor of fascism, the Buffon, the Joker, whatever. He was the inventor of fascism, and we'll talk about more about the intricacies of this aspect. It's like second to last question or last question. Okay, so let's see the answer. They truly believed that Mussolini would keep Germany at bay, and they did not see any problems in yet another colonial move. Excellent answer, Christian, to keep Germany in their own place. This is a guy called A.G.P. Taylor, a very important British historian. I found this, what he said about that, which is very interesting. It was the Hoare-Laval Pact that killed the League, and the pact was a perfectly sensible plan in line with the League's previous acts of conciliation from Corfu to Manchuria, which have ended the war, satisfying Italy. That was actually the plan, and a secret understanding, and left Abyssinia with a more workable national territory. But the common sense of the plan was, in the circumstances of the time, its defect, its demise. So A.G.P. Taylor argued that it was this pact, it was this kind of strange and abnormal relation between the big powerhouses of the League of Nations, England and France, on one side, and Italy on the other side. This kind of strange friendship, because that's the question about why UK and France secretly agree with Italy. And it was because they didn't care too much about Abyssinia, as long as their interests were not, harmed or destroyed or jeopardized. But actually, this pact is one of the most important, in the opinion of Taylor, that killed the League. I won't say that this pact necessarily was the reason that killed the League, but it was a contributing factor. I can say that too. And there is another history. Yeah. Yes.
What exactly is the
Laval Pact. Remember we talked about that. I will actually I will write in here Laval Pact and present to you a short presentation about that because I don't want to leave this untouched. Okay, so it's going to be there at the end. Okay.
Okay.
Because I want to continue with this. So now the military historian, another guy, Corelli Barnett, that's the guy, because when he was young, he died in 2022 last year. He argued that if Britain, look at that, that's very, very interesting. If Britain alienated Italy, Italy would be a potential enemy astride England's main line of imperial communication at a time when she was already under threat from two existing potential enemies at opposite ends of the line, Germany and Japan. So again, Corelli noted that if Britain will act against Italy, they will lose another friend, another big country which will ally with Germany and Japan, which actually happened later on. And that will actually jeopardize their, that will be the start of the beginning of the end of the big empire, which it was actually, because the big empire started to dismember. They lost control of colonies one after another later on in the 40s, 50s, 60s. They become, the moment they advanced the idea of the Commonwealth, then that was the moment when they started to lose the empire. And the empire is lost now completely. So if Italy were to fight in a future war, that's another interesting idea, was in a future war as an ally of Germany, of Japan, or both, the British would be forced to abandon, which is very interesting and cool, the Mediterranean Sea for the first time since 1798. So again, a big problem with their interests, okay, financial, colonial, economic, dictated by the trade and so on. Therefore, in Corelli's view, it was highly dangerous nonsense to provoke Italy due to Britain's military and naval weakness, and therefore the pact was a sensible option. The pact, actually, Laval, is a pact between England and Italy to not step on each other's foot, to not disturb the other's business, to keep lines of communication open, to be friendly rather than belligerent towards each other. So that's actually the pact, but we're gonna look into that a little bit later, okay, Christian? So next, explain Rome-Berlin axis. That's an interesting thing. Who can explain to me? What do you think is this?
It's an agreement between.
It's an agreement. Yes. Yes, it's an agreement between Mussolini and Hitler. So Rome-Berlin axis was the alliance formed in 1936 between Italy and Germany. Agreement linking these two fascist countries. Remember, originally, all these the three main countries that become fascists were Italy, Germany, and Spain under Franco. Fascism, specific fascism for Nazi Germany called Nazism, okay, type of fascism which is impregnated with the National Socialist doctrine. So it was formalized by the Pact of Steel. Again, Axis, Pact of Steel sounds like more like a Lord of the Rings things, Hobbit. In 1939, and the term Axis powers came to include Japan as well. So these were the Axis powers. This was the meaning of Axis powers, okay? Coming from this axis, and there will be another explanation, and I will show you what exactly was that, okay? An axis a little bit later. Okay, So that was the question. Explain Rome-Berlin axis, a very simple one, an alliance between Italy and Germany, an agreement linking the two fascist countries. Again, fascism invented by Benito Mussolini. Fascism, can you please tell me what was fascism from your recollections from our lesson? Fascism?
It's an ideology.
Yes.
Prioritizes like the state and
nation. Yeah.
nation.
Excellent, excellent. State and nation rather than individual. Very good. So if the nation asks you to do something, I don't know, die for the country, you can die happily because you've done everything for your nation. So nationhood idea. The collective is more important than individual, kind of. Okay, good. How desired was Manchuria, and how the Japanese people received the withdrawal from the League of Nations. Very interesting. Any thoughts about that? How desired was Manchuria, and why Manchuria was so desired, and how the Japanese received the withdrawal from the League of Nations?
Manchuria could have been like extra room for a surplus of population.
Yes.
People. And I think they couldn't have been too concerned with leaving the League of Nations because it left them free, in their opinion, to pursue their own ambitions.
Excellent.
Standing.
Very, very good answer, Christian. Well done. Yes, Japanese people strongly believed that Manchuria was Japanese territory. Two main ideas in yellow. And so look at that. This is what Matsuoka, the guy who was in charge of Japan at the League of Nations, he said, Japan will oppose any attempt at international control of Manchuria. It does not mean that we defied you, because Manchuria belongs to us by right. I don't want you to do the association with nowadays war, but you can read instead of Manchuria, Crimea, and you'll see what's happening. Not in relation with this, but from in relation with Ukraine-Russian war. So we continue, because Manchuria belongs to us by right. Read your history. We recover Manchuria from Russia. We made it what it is today. That's an allusion to the developments, the train line and all that stuff, the developments for business and everything in the Manchukuo region, and the Japanese interest in that. So Matsuoka said that Manchuria was a matter of life and death for Japan. So you can see how strong they felt about this, and it's obviously because of these two main reasons. One, you actually pointed towards one of the reasons, Christian, the living space for Japanese. They were advertising and other things, advertising for families to move in Manchuria, Japanese families to move in there and start a new life, farming and everything. And the other one was obviously resources. The depletion of resources in Japan was complete. And so they looked over other overseas territories to, replace. They needed first the staple food, rice, a place where to grow crops for the army and for everything, for the war to come, and also resources in terms of minerals and other things that they can find in Manchuria, a very rich region in China, in southeast of China. Japan, what he says, there is no concession or compromise possible in this specific thing. It's exactly what they say about Crimea. There is a red line for Russia. The moment the Ukrainians are taking Crimea, most likely Russians will use the nuclear tactic bombs to stop them. to bring them back. Emotive language was used as the second idea to persuade the League of Nations not to go forward with the condemnation and with the measures against Japan. In objecting to proposed international control of Manchuria, Matsuoka asked, that's very interesting. Look at what he asked. Would the American people agree to such control of the Panama Canal zone? Would the British permit it over Egypt? The Japanese people will oppose any attempt in Manchuria. I beg of this body to realize the facts and see a vision of the future. I beg of you to deal with us on our terms, to give us your confidence. Again, I should say that Japanese were, following, I just want to make a joke now. They were following the Mandalorian way. This is the way, this is our way. So it was kind of like clear that they're not gonna put up with any other end of the story in Manchuria. So the question, how desired was Manchuria? Very desired. And how the Japanese people received the withdrawal, they didn't care because they strongly believed that Manchuria was Japanese territory and it was theirs, and they need it and it's theirs. There cannot be any other discussion about that. And we come to question number 10, which is halfway through. Do you have any tips on remembering smaller pieces of information such as casualties, countries, names, or dates? That was a specific question from one of your colleagues. If I have any tips in this regard, I will not be that guy to say that you have to study. I mean, you know this is a fact. You have to write a lot, in my opinion. To write a lot on the paper with the pencil, I don't know, like this, okay? I have it here, still have it here, and writing, and just because that never fails. But I have some of the pointers you can try with this. It depends on your memorization, your type of learning and stuff like that. I had a visual memory, so I'll tell you about that a little bit later. So think of the main story, weave the story, spin a yarn about an important event. It's clearly, if you think of the story, all the things will come to you, names and some of the dates. Usually you have to go with your gut instinct and really trust yourself. The information is there. If you've done your writing on paper and everything, the information should be there. It is said that 80% of in 80% of the cases, the first thing to come into your mind, it's the right one. The moment you start thinking and rethinking, you lose the plot and kind of like lose the essence. So it'll be my advice to you to use your gut instinct, and the moment you have a question, if something comes into your mind, that's the answer, and you try to develop on that. Another idea is mnemonics. We've done that during the class. Some of the mnemonics are very funny. It's up to you how you do this. They don't work with me. I don't remember mnemonics. It's another thing to remember. So that goes against the idea of how to memorize. But some people believe that this is a good method to memorize. That's okay. Flashcards, they always work with me, and that's why I have, when I'm going to show you now, Voire Laval Pact is a specific kind of presentation with flashcard type of presentation, very simple and clear, and you have few bits and pieces, and that's it. You don't overcomplicate. Also, timelining, it's the one that I like the most. Is I'm using it the most. Remember the full story, where exactly the story is situated on the large, complex timeline of events. That's an important one. You can create it. You can do this. I used to learn like that. It's my brain now. That doesn't mean that you have to do it. It's another idea. I used to write on pieces of paper and just literally put them on the bed around me with dates, okay, like specific dates. For example, I don't know, Hitler comes to power January 1933, and I'll put it back big, okay. And if you see that in the morning and when you go to the bed and whatever, like more than few weeks, that's gonna stay there forever. And so it's gonna be good for you. It works for some people to stick it to your walls in your room. At some point before the exams, I got my information on the top of the room, on the roof of my room. So I will watch from the bed and see the questions. That's a little bit extreme. So it's up to you really which one you want. I will use the marker and make it visible, and that's about it.